Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Zach Kathnelson. I'm the Director of Growth at Klipfolio. I'm really excited to chat with you today. We've got some really cool, really simple content to cover today on working and building dashboards with data from Excel. So I've got a good sample dashboard here. This is with some data that I downloaded and built with from Salesforce data. We're going to start from scratch. So if you are starting a new Klipfolio trial today, and you've got some relevant data in Excel, we want to talk about, and we want to help you get that data into Klipfolio in a nice, scalable way so that you can build dashboards with it today, share those out to key team members and key stakeholders, and then have the data live update as it changes over time. We have a ton of spreadsheets that are shared amongst different teams in the business. Everybody collaborating, many different spreadsheets on scheduled export from key systems in the business where there isn't a direct API connection. So there's lots of routes we can take. We'll talk about all of them. But the first thing you want to do and think about is get your data into Klipfolio. So I've clicked on the data sources section along the left. And what I want to do is create a new data source. So if your data is in Excel, two things might jump out at you. One, we do have the option to upload a file. Pretty easy. You can pick a file stored locally on your system, bring that into Klipfolio, and build any content you'd like with it. That's a fine route while you are experimenting and exploring, maybe in a trial, but it's not a good scalable long-term approach. What also might jump out at you if you're working with Excel data is the ability to upload a file. These are going to be the same options here. Both will allow you to choose a file that you've got stored locally on your computer. But they're not a good long-term approach because you're not making any live connection to data. Instead, you're making a one-time connection. You're taking the file as it exists today, and I've got one here. I'm not going to do much with it, but you're taking the file as it exists today, you're bringing it into Klipfolio, and you're creating some great content. Well, guess what? If we open that file, or if anyone else opens that file that you've emailed to them or that you've got on a share site somewhere, and they make changes to it, then those changes are never going to sync into the dashboard because you have not made a live connection to that data. So for that reason, instead of uploading a file, a better approach is to store the file in one of a few different cloud sharing services. We're a Google Apps shop here at Klipfolio, so we use Google Drive extensively. But some other options you could use are OneDrive, Box, Dropbox, or if your team doesn't really make use of those types of services for security reasons or for any other reason, storing the file in an FTP or SFTP server will essentially deliver the same solution. Ultimately, you can store that file in Google Drive, which I've done. So let's go track it down quickly. And you can make a live connection to the version of that file that's stored in Drive or Dropbox or your FTP server. And that way, any changes that are made to the file by you or any collaborators on it automatically sync up to Google's cloud or Dropbox's cloud or so on. And those changes will automatically sync into Klipfolio as well. So if your data is in Excel, this is the right approach to take. So let's go find our file in question. So here I've got it, example live sales data. By the way, this is the same file that we make available in all Klipfolio trials. So if you wanted to follow along and try to recreate some of what we're doing today, all you need is a free trial. No cost, no commitment, no credit card required. It's a 14-day trial by default. And the nice thing about it is it's absolutely fully featured. There's a lot of different elements of our pricing, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, but there are actually no limits in the trial, so you can explore anything you want to. So we're going to choose the file that we have in Google Drive. Here we get a preview of what our file looks like. Everything looks good. I'm not going to model this data source for now, but I'll spend some time a little bit later quickly running through the model, the ability to model raw data and the benefits to it. We'll just continue for now. And this page is going to show us a few really important things. So firstly, we're going to give this a good name. You may have many, many different data sources over time in Klipfolio, and you want to make sure that you give them good names. The descriptions are optional, but everything you do here will help you find and know what this data source is over time. So let's call this so I've got a good name and a good description. Q for refresh is also a really important step. This is basically asking how often should Klipfolio reach back out to Google Drive and pull in the newest version of the file. For the purposes of our demo here, I'm going to choose every minute. Now this is a factor in our pricing. However, you should choose whichever option makes the most sense to your business. If this is on a wall board in your warehouse or on your sales floor and having data update every minute is important, that absolutely is an option in Klipfolio on some of the higher pricing tiers. If this is for reporting purposes and daily data or maybe a few times a day refreshes are suitable for the use case, then choose that option. We're going to choose every minute for now, and we're going to share this with edit access for all other users in our trial. So I'm going to save this, and I have just created a data source. We use the term data source a lot in Klipfolio, and really one of the simple ways to think about that is a specific and unique set of data that we're going to use to build dashboards with. You can have many, many different data sources over time. In fact, we don't limit that at all. You can also use multiple different data sources. So this is one. Let's say I had a different one that gave me more granular detail on the types of customers these were, or other info that wasn't available in this particular data source. I can use two data sources together. In fact, I can use over 10 data sources together in a single visualization to tell the story in a way that makes the most sense. But I digress. So we have created a data source. This is coming from Google Drive. I've now set myself up to build content in a nice scalable way. So let's go and build a new clip with it. I want to show you a few quick things of how easy it is to bring this data to life. Now, this is a really, really important screen in Klipfolio. This is really where the magic happens. We call this the clip editor. There's a lot going on in this screen, but I'll walk you through it really quickly. One really important section is the list of components over on the right. So these are the list of various types of charts and graphs that we support in Klipfolio out of the box. And whatever type of chart I'd like to build, I'm going to start with a bar and line chart. I can take and drag into the middle. I now see the data that I wanted to work with, and I now see a preview of the type of content that I'm building. Another really important section is over here at the top left. We call this the component tree. I tend to think of it as a table of contents. This is showing me all the different individual parts of the clip that I'm building. And when I'm building a bar chart, I always start with the x-axis. So let's do something really simple here. We're going to take all of our company names. Now I do have the ability to just simply click and drag and put a few items on the chart. What we recommend is choosing an entire column of data instead of just a few cells. You can see our formula updates with the data that we have chosen. And the reason choosing an entire column is important is that if we scroll down, right now as of today, this data source has around 1,500 rows in it. Let's imagine 100 new rows are added tomorrow. Well, if all I did was choose cells 191 to 193, then that is all that will ever appear on my x-axis, the items in these three cells. However, if I choose an entire column of data and new data comes in at the bottom tomorrow, then that new data is automatically captured. We're automatically going to get all the data in column I. So for that reason, that's the right approach to take. You can then use some simple functionality in Klipfolio to tidy this up. So we do support a library of functions in Klipfolio, similar to what you might see. Let's see, we've got some great shortcuts and they differ Mac to PC, but I've shown our list of functions by holding Control and the space bar. You can do some simple things in here like sum a column of data or build an array of data, all the way up to really, really advanced statistical functions. Very similar to what you might see if you're an Excel Power user or a database user. Not an exact mirror to those functions, but very, very similar. We're going to do something much simpler. Think of the functions as something that you have access to that basically allow you to do an unlimited amount of data manipulation to your raw data. If you can think of how you need to clean up or manipulate the data that you have access to, you can probably do it using these functions. So huge flexibility, huge power, but a degree of complexity to it. Another option to manipulate data, and what we're going to do today, is much, much simpler. So I'm going to right click over here on the x-axis, and there's three options that show up for us. One is the ability to group this data, to remove any duplicate values. I can see right here, we do have some duplicates. I see advanced communications over here, advanced communications here, 3 records for R. Holden and Sons. We're going to group this to remove all the duplicate values. And all of a sudden, our list gets a little bit cleaner. We'll further clean this up as well. What I'm also going to do is set up a filter. A filter would be good. If I knew right away I always only wanted to look at the data for these 3 organizations, then I could choose them here and create a filter. What we want to do instead is show all of the names on this list. However, just exclude both the column header and maybe one other that we know we're not interested in looking at. I won't do that here. I'm just going to remove the column header. Now, taking this approach means that any new data that comes in, so if we see a new record for a company tomorrow that wasn't there today, that new record is automatically included when we take this approach. So I'm going to set up that filter, and we see our x-axis adjust slightly. Now we're going to build the series of data that we want to work with. So I choose that section up in the component tree, the table of contents, and I just want to track revenue for all these organizations. And all of a sudden you can see our data spring to life. What I might do a little bit further is, firstly, I'm going to give these series, and that will affect our legend as well, some good names so our users understand what they're looking at. And I'm also going to choose to show the values on the chart. Now this will sort of auto adjust based on the available real estate in your chart. However, nice way to just bring that data to life. And maybe we say that it isn't a relevant option. If I had a smaller number of items on the axis, maybe I would do it. A few other things we're going to do. Again, I'm going to right click on the series and I'm going to decide to sort this. It's a little bit difficult to sort of interpret this data at a glance. There's a lot of records and they're in no particular order. I'm going to choose to sort the series from highest to lowest to put our larger revenue accounts at the front. And there's a little too much data on here still to be able to interpret this at a glance. So on the series, I'm going to create a filter, and I want to show only the top 10 companies. So now our chart, much more clean, much more readable. The numbers can be clearly interpreted. Every individual section of your clip has its own properties menu. So on the x-axis, I have options such as maybe we want to show the labels at a different angle. Maybe if there was a lot of data on our chart, we would want to show only every second label. That one's really relevant when you're showing dates because you can sort of interpret what this one would be even if the label wasn't there. If this was a date, it doesn't make sense here, but lots of options, visual options in the properties menu, and they are unique to every section of the clip. The properties menu for the series, for example, Klipfolio is pretty good at detecting the data format. In this case, we've gotten it wrong. I don't know if actually, we took it right out of the data set. So we couldn't really know that this was revenue. However, we as the builder do know that. So I'm going to override the format to a currency. That's going to put our $sign here. Perfect. So there we've built a nice chart. Let's add a few other elements to it. So one, the properties menu at the bar line chart level, just like the series and the x-axis have its own properties menu, the bar line chart does as well. We are going to add another series here. So while our first bar is showing revenue, let's give this one a label. Let's also track the number of units. So I've already done all the hard work. I've already filtered based on our x-axis. I've already sorted based on our revenue and chosen to only show the top 10. So all the heavy lifting is done. If I want to show the number of units, I simply have to choose that column of data. And that comes to life as a bar. I think a maybe more meaningful way to showcase this might be a line. And then again, just like before, a lot of visual options to allow me to show this data in the most useful way. Because I've given each of these series a good label, they appear in the legend and also in the tooltip. When I hover over the units line, I see both the x-axis item, the number of units sold, and similarly, when I hover over the revenue bar, I see the same details there. So let's give this clip a good name. But let's do a little bit more. I don't think we're done here. So even though originally we decided to build a bar chart, let's go a little bit further. A nice option you have when building a clip is what we call the layout grid. So I'm going to take this. It sort of behaves, or it looks just like a chart type in Klipfolio, but really what this lets you do is build and design and lay out your clip in a way that makes the most sense for your viewers. You can get really, really granular and specific here and bring the data to life just as it exists on a napkin scratch or in your mind. So we've pulled in this layout grid that basically gives us two workspaces. Another nice chart type and a really good one for both showing a little bit of data and then some context, or also showing two related values, maybe revenue this month versus revenue last month. The value pair is a nice way to achieve that. So I'm going to undo what I did and ask you to watch over on the left. Remember, this is our table of contents. It's showing you every part of the clip. And as soon as we pull in the value pair, you see that that record now is visible in our component tree, in the table of contents. And clicking through over here at the top left is an excellent way to navigate and build the specific elements of your clip. You can see that as soon as we click on something, the element that we've clicked on is highlighted in blue. So for our primary value, I just want to call out the total number of revenue in the data set. So I choose all the data in column C. And again, we're going to use some really simple options to manipulate this data. I don't want to show every record. That's not relevant, especially in this format. I want to show it as an aggregated value. With numerical data, you can override the aggregation, but the default is sum, and that works perfectly for us. One nice thing you can do, and we do this a lot on some of our wall boards, is it's nice that I have the full number here in 2 decimal places, but I'm not really interested in that. So I'm just going to do some simple math in our formula, divide by 1,000, and now we've got the number in a slightly more meaningful way. I'm going to choose to show 1 decimal point. I'm going to format this as a currency, which puts our currency symbol in here. You can override that for other markets. I'm also going to put a suffix on here just to show our viewers quickly that this is 44,000. And then in the secondary value, when I click on the second line, either in the clip or I could have navigated and done it over here, I'm going to add a little bit of context. Just put some text in here. And any text that you're adding, you need to put inside quotation marks. Let's just call this total revenue. And maybe I decide that in terms of the layout, I want to show this right in the middle. So you saw I had to click around a few times to find the option to do that. It's a really good tip just to remember every individual section of your clip has its own properties panel where you can control almost everything about how the data appears. So again, the good news here is it took us a little while to achieve this in the perfect way, but now that we've done it, I can either right click in the clip itself or right click on the value pair in our table of contents. And what I want to do is copy this, copy all the work we've done, and just paste it over here in the other section of our layout grid. So I've just duplicated everything. And really the only thing I want to change is instead of revenue over here, I want to show our quantity. So now we've got that data reflecting. This is not currency, so this is numerical data. I might want to show 1 decimal point just like before. And in our secondary value, I'm just going to update the text. So there we go. We've just built a nice clip with Excel data. Let's save this, put this on our dashboard. Let's also share it with all users so they can dig into it, and maybe they need to make some changes. So I just gave them edit access. Let's add a new blank dashboard to put this content onto. And we're going to add that clip that we built. Done. Now, it is the default setting, I believe. However, sometimes you may end up in a state where you've chosen to showcase the data in one of our templated layouts. That's a nice option. This content will load very quickly. It's quicker for us to process this data when it's sort of snapped into a grid. However, I do find I generally choose the custom layout option. And the advantage is I get the ability to just resize the clip and give it exactly as much space as it needs. Screen real estate is really, really important on a dashboard. You want to have your most relevant data up at the top left because that's where users' eyes gravitate to immediately, and only give the content as much space as it needs and nothing more. You really don't want to ask the user to scroll down to view relevant data. They should be able to see everything they need at a glance. So we are at a really interesting time here at Klipfolio. We launched our application in 2011. I've been with the organization for just over 5 years, since late 2013, and I've seen a tremendous amount of change. It's been really, really exciting to be a part of. What we've built here, and really Klipfolio, as all of our customers know us today, has always been this solution, what we built today. Some of the biggest value props and the biggest reason customers choose us in a competitive market is huge power and huge flexibility. We can get data in from thousands of different services, and if you can make your data accessible to Klipfolio, there's almost no limits to how you can showcase it. That's really where we win. Huge power, huge flexibility. But we're at a really exciting time. While 100% of our customers know and love this solution that we've showcased today, we are currently in beta with a really exciting extension to our platform called Power Metrics. Even things like the terminology are about to change. If you think of the classic version of Klipfolio that we've been working with since launch in 2011, again, huge power, huge flexibility, but one of the biggest hurdles can be complexity. While you can manipulate and showcase your data in so many different ways, getting the content just right can be a challenge. What we're currently in beta with, we sacrifice a little bit of the flexibility. That's one of the reasons I wanted to sort of showcase this data in this way. We've got a bar chart with 2 different series on it. We decided to put another metric just above it and to the left, and another one. We could have added some text, a whole paragraph of context, so our users could see. So huge power, huge flexibility on the custom dashboard side. We sacrifice a little bit of the really granular flexibility in Power Metrics, but what we gain is magic. We ask the user a few questions about the data. Which element of the data is a date? What is the metric that you would like to measure, and how do you want to be able to slice and dice that data? We ask the user to tell us a little bit about the data, at which point it's no longer raw. And what that lets us do is actually do the building for the user. So let's walk through that use case, and we'll see how it differs. So if I hop over to metric monitoring, as you see it today, and then again, this is what we call Power Metrics. I'm going to create a new Power Metric. I'm going to choose to define my own. We do have some pre-built content that you can leverage. So if you do a lot of work with some of the services you're seeing here, feel free to see some of the instant metrics that you can load very quickly. we're going to choose to define our own. After all, this is about working with Excel data. So I've already created that data source that I want to work with, and really it's the same file. Let's actually go a step back. So I mentioned earlier when we chose the data source that we wanted to work with, I mentioned that I wasn't going to model the data source. Let's find the same file. I mentioned that I wasn't going to model the data source. Now, in a trial, we do give you the same data source, both in the raw format, and you can see by this small icon here, this indicates it's raw format. This different icon indicates that it is modeled. I'll show you what we mean by modeled. So here's the raw data source that we worked with originally. If we choose to create a modeled data source, and this again speaks to some of the differences between the classic platform that we've always and will continue to support, and what we're currently in beta with, we essentially try to convert the raw data into a format that we know and understand. So you see that each column of data, we're trying to guess at what the format is, and generally we get it right, but here it's really important for us to override it. This is in fact a date column. These dates are in a Unix time format, or epoch time. It's a computer science date format that basically is showing the number of seconds that have elapsed since January 1st, 1960, I believe, or 1970. Essentially a computer readable date format. And it's really, really helpful for performing calculations against, because any conceivable date, including all the way up to the timestamp, can be converted to a raw number, but obviously not very readable to you and I. So we're going to hop in here, and we are going to change the format and tell Klipfolio this is a date. You can see that it looks like we've got it wrong here. So I want to explain to Klipfolio how this data is coming in. So it's coming in Unix time. And then I can dictate exactly how I want it displayed. Maybe I want the full date, including the timestamp, so that I can get really, really granular with this data. The rest of the columns, it looks like we've gotten right. Now that example earlier, where I made a change to the data in Google Drive, I'll show you another one of the advantages to Modeler. So actually, let's use these two. So here I've got our base price, and then here I've got our retail price. So presumably, we can interpret this as cost and then sale price. So there's margin to be calculated here. Even though that doesn't exist in my data, what I'm going to do is insert a new column. So I'm actually overriding our raw data here. And let's do some math in here. So I want to edit the formula. And again, what we're going to do is really simple. We're going to take our retail price, and we're going to subtract our base price. And that's going to give us our margin, or maybe profit. I'm actually going to override the format to all of these because I want to represent these as currencies. And that's the last thing I'll do in the modeler. But the big takeaway is the major difference is while the original data source that we pulled in from Google Drive was essentially raw data that Klipfolio didn't really understand and didn't really endeavor to understand. As soon as we model the data, all of a sudden we understand that this is a currency, this is a text value, which might become a really nice segment or dimension for us, and this is a date. And that understanding actually is going to let us bring this data to life with very little effort from the user. So let's save this. And from here, instead of building a clip, since I am on the power metric side, I'm going to build a new power metric. So you remember the first screen you got when you tried to build a clip, that clip editor, where you could really be very granular and be very specific about how you showcased your data. This flow is entirely different. We're going to walk you through a series of small questions to help bring this data to life in the most relevant way. So which data source do I want to connect to? We've already chosen that. So let's go to the next step. What is the one metric that I'm really interested in measuring? I have a lot of options here from the data set. Do I want to measure the quantity of the products sold, the revenue, the number of days of activity for each of these customers, which was another numerical value in our data? Let's actually measure profit, that new column that we created. And how do I want to aggregate this data? Do I want to simply count the number of records? Do I want the average? Let's keep it as sum. And let's go to the next step. Here, this is a really exciting one. So from all the text values in my data, I get to choose. So we're going to look at profit. How do I want to be able to dig deeper into profit? Do I want to be able to slice and dice it by the different products, by the different customer types? I'm going to take every option for the purposes of this demo, and that's going to allow us to create a really, really rich power metric that people can use and dig into in a ton of different ways. A power metric requires a date. It doesn't require that your data actually contains a date, but if it does, you sort of have a few options. I'm going to choose the date column that we have in our data source. I would also have the option to use today's data. That, for a demo, would really just show me one point. It would show me the total profit as of today. But the really nice thing is that this is a live connection to data that exists in Google Drive. So we're going to keep pulling that data over time. And tomorrow, I would have a second data point. I would also have the ability to dig very deep and look at the data by minute, since I've included the timestamp. But essentially, if your data does not include a date, it's fine. Power metrics can really show a nice story starting today. It would show a single point today and it would just continue to grow over time. And one of the biggest one of the things that our existing customer base is most excited about is that Power Metrics is going to remember the historical data, even if the source data changes or is no longer available. It's a really exciting principle. So that data is going to grow over time and we're going to help you track it and stay on top of it. So I'm going to go to the next step. I'm going to give our metric a good name. Profit works. The data format is indeed a currency. More profit is a good thing. Let's save this. And we have just created a power metric. So here we've got profit. Now this view here is just showing you a really high level of all the different power metrics in your account. So I'm going to dig deeper into this one. And this is what we've created. So this is the all-time representation of our data. Our data source goes back to 2017, goes until today. But all the options that I have allow me to dig deeper into this data however I need. So for instance, if I wanted to look at and examine this data monthly, I have that option and the data springs to life. I can do a lot of filtering and manipulating in this screen. However, I'm going to do a few quick things. Firstly, I'm going to star this power metric. That puts it right at the top of the list on the side panel. And then I'm going to take this power metric and I'm going to add it to a metric board. I'm actually going to create a new one. Perfect. So all of the dimensions that we chose when we were creating our power metric are available here and can be added as global filters. So if I know that I'm only interested in digging into a single organization, I can quickly and easily do that. If I know that I want to look at the data over the last 90 days or even a longer period, that's easily doable here right through our quick filters. What I want to show is we have created one power metric, revenue. So let's get it back to showing all of our customers. This date range is probably fine, but let's just give us the full last year. I'm actually going to add that exact same power metric over and over. And each time I'm going to showcase it in a slightly different way because I really want to tell, or I want this metric board to be able to tell a complete story. And that really involves looking at this same metric, the amount of profit my organization is generating, in a number of different ways. So maybe I just want to show the high level value. I want to configure this and be able to show a comparison versus the previous period. So the last 12 months were really, really good. And at a glance, I'm going to be able to see that. I'm going to put it front and center, top left. So it's actually the first thing my users see. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep adding this metric. Maybe let's add it a few more times. And again, each time showcase that data in a slightly different way to tell a more complete story. Instead of the totals, I might want to segment this by country to be able to view that data at a glance. And also by sales rep. That's really important to me personally. I want to be able to see which of the team members and which of the territories is really healthy and performing well, and which might make sense to double down on or see how we can help if something is not performing well. Now, a consideration that you can really see highlighted here, the number of reps. This is not a glaring example of the problem, but if you choose a dimension that has too many different options, how you showcase that data is a real consideration. This particular chart is almost too busy to be even readable. We can maybe examine, looking at that data in a pie chart is a more efficient approach to take at a glance. So again, from that single power metric, we've been able to showcase this data in tons of different ways, and we did this so quickly. We're really, really excited about this new functionality and all of the doors that it's opening for us. Let's just see in this last example, let's showcase it by customer type. So here we see which of our channels is performing really, really well. So this board, the entire board will react to all of our global filters, so we can really just look at this quickly and easily over time. A really nice thing that I like to do on the simple charts, it gets a little bit too crowded on some of the line graphs with more series, but that comparison value, how that performs, or that trend line rather, we can either show a moving average line or linear trend. What I actually wanted to show was, again, a comparison. We've got our comparison up here, so I'm going to introduce it down here as well, and we can sort of see that performance over time. And all of the filters that we have access to are all accessible up here at the top. So if we wanted to dig deep just into one of our product groups, we can make that selection, and the entire chart will react quickly and easily. I'm going to save this metric board. This can easily be shared with any other user in the trial, of which I unfortunately have none. However, if I did quickly and easily share them by named user, I can also access a link that I can share with users so they can quickly and easily access this. And any other user in the account will have access to the board and more importantly, access to all of the different filters, all the different configuration options, so that this power metric that we have brainstormed and we have created, they can make small adjustments to it. They can't override the larger choices we made, like the choice to showcase profit instead of revenue or instead of number of units sold. However, they can choose not to show the dollar value as the loudest element on the board. They can choose to always filter to just the geography they're most interested in, or an individual team member might always show data just for them. So you're really empowering users to dig in and consume the data in the most relevant ways. And again, all of this came from a simple spreadsheet that's really important to our organization. And we took the approach of storing that sheet in Google Drive so that we could make a live connection to it. And any changes, no matter how many in the day, no matter who in the business is making those changes, would automatically sync into our board every minute. So I'm going to pause for a minute to address a few questions. So one question that came to mind early, or that came up early, was, yeah, we integrate with the Google services. Do we also integrate with some of the Microsoft solutions? We do. So OneDrive is an option. Let's just make sure we've saved everything here. Everything looks good. OneDrive is certainly an option that users can take. Let's see. So I'm going to go back to the custom dashboard side. And we are going to create a data source. So I think it came up when we looked at Google Drive, and it was on that last screen too, but OneDrive certainly an option, and the experience is nearly identical, slightly different UI in Klipfolio, but you're still gonna have the ability to sign into your OneDrive and access any of the files you've got in there to work with in Klipfolio. Yeah, one question on FTP and SFTP. So I said that the experience would be very similar to working with Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox. I guess what I meant was that the technical delivery of the solution from our side is very similar. You're able to specify the location of the FTP or SFTP server, and just like you would with Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive, you'll see a list of the files that you have access to in that FTP, and you can choose whichever file you'd like to work with. So the technical similarity is that you're not just uploading a file and making a one-time connection to it. Instead, you're pointing Klipfolio to a live version of that file that we can reach back out to every minute or every hour and pull in the newest version of. So again, if either creating your own FTP server or file share is an option for you, or you can ask for some help from your IT team, this is a great and very scalable long-term approach to work with Excel data. What we also see some users do is many organizations have some really relevant data in a SQL database, but they're not really comfortable with a third party querying their production database, either for security reasons or for load reasons. They might create really simple workflows to grab certain data sets from the database, push them to an FTP server really as often as they would need, and then they can take this approach to grab that data, again, every hour, every day, whatever is required. So FTP or SFTP server, if that's an option for your organization, that's a really good long-term approach too. Yeah, and a good question here on how data impacts pricing. So let's look at Klipfolio's pricing and licensing. So I mentioned that Klipfolio allows you to really work with an unlimited number of data sources, and that's true. All of our pricing plans allow you to leverage all of our different connectors, so there's no limits there. And all of our pricing plans allow you to create as many different distinct data sources as is required. The one factor that we looked at today that does play a role in our pricing is how often that data is refreshing. So our introductory plan, the starter plan, starts at $29 per month. Data can refresh every 4 hours on that plan, and you're able to work with 3 different team members and build 3 different dashboards. So those would be similar to the 3 dashboards that we've got here. A good way to think of a dashboard is that it's a collection of data, of visualizations designed for a specific group of users. Our marketing team might be interested in this dashboard. I know a number of them are friends with Ezekiel, and they might want to come by and pat him on the back for being in first place, but they're not really going to look at this dashboard every day. I've got this dashboard. This is fictional, but I would have it shared with my sales team. Whereas our OKR dashboard, I might have this shared with the executive team who don't really need to dig into who the specific accounts are this month or which of our sales reps have done demonstrations with customers in certain geographies. They just want to see the high level view. So a dashboard is, again, a collection of visuals designed for a specific audience. And you can also see that I'm trying to follow a best practice here and not ask anyone to scroll. All of the relevant info is available at a glance. I've tried to put our most relevant content front and center at the top left. There's no need to scroll. And on this first board, there's minimal requirements to scroll. That's a best practice I would suggest as well. So that's what we mean by a dashboard. And also the power metric board that we created really quickly with all of our global filters. Let's try and find that one. This is also considered a dashboard in Klipfolio when you're thinking of our pricing and licensing. And beyond that, there's a few elements that some of the larger plans unlock. The ability to schedule emails to be sent out at certain intervals, or the ability to generally download content from Klipfolio is unlocked at the published plan tier. The ability to personalize the dashboards and add your logo, available on the Grow plan, and that can be done really, really easily. We can simply upload a file or select a file that we've got stored locally. This is the main logo on all the dashboards, and again, far top left, users are going to see this really early on. This is also front and center on any published links to the dashboard and also any PDF reports. Sharing content by link. So basically, any of the dashboards that we've created, we can generate a specific URL. On some of the higher tier plans, those can be password protected. On the published plan, the link can be generated, but no password applied. So a number of other sort of features in our pricing, but really amount of content and the speed at which that content, that data source is refreshing are the largest factors in the licensing. Any other questions at all? I'm happy to dig deeper on, but I really, really appreciate everyone joining today. So many different organizations have content that's hugely important to them stored in Excel. I hope this was a good overview of the best ways to work with that data. Tons and tons of flexibility in Klipfolio to showcase it in the way that you need and in the way that makes the most sense. I find myself often saying it, and I think I said it earlier. If you have access to the data that you want to work with, there's almost no limits to how you can showcase it in Klipfolio. If you see potential in bringing your data to life, better tracking some of the metrics that are really relevant to your teams and sharing those out with key team members and key people either inside or outside the business, we would love to see if we can help out. You can start a free trial. You can chat with us anytime through the live chat on our website or in the trial. We're a really helpful bunch, and we would love to connect. Thank you again so much for your time. Hope this was helpful, and have a fantastic rest of the day. Bye for now.